If I could get everyone's attention, please. We do have a quorum, and we're going to start our meeting. We have a very, very, very full agenda. Thank you all, Roundtable members, for coming. Really appreciate you coming out on the first day of August. Many of us are dark this month and on vacation, but thank you all for your time and your effort and your willingness to work through these issues with us. And thank you all, the members of the public. So I am going to call the meeting of the San Francisco Community Noise Abatement Roundtable to order on Wednesday, August 1st. And may I have the roll call, please?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Here, Doug Yackel.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. CCAG Airport Land Use Commission.
Carol Ford.
Town of Atherton.
Elizabeth Lewis.
City of Belmont. City of Brisbane.
Terry O'Connell.
City of Burlingame. City of Daly City. City of Foster City. City of Half Moon Bay.
Harvey Rarback.
Town of Hillsborough.
Al Royce.
City of Menlo Park. City of Millbrae.
Ann Schneider.
City of Pacifica. Town of Portola Valley.
Craig Hughes.
City of Redwood City.
Janet Borgens.
City of San Bruno.
Marty Medina.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo.
Diane Pepin.
City of South San Francisco.
Mark Adiego for South San Francisco.
And Town of Woodside. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you all. Thank you all. As I said, we have a very full agenda tonight, and we do want to end on the appropriate time of around 9 o'clock to respect everyone's time. We have some very special guests here tonight, and I'd like to just briefly call out their names and introduce them to let you know that they are here. And I do have a couple of other housekeeping issues and items of how we're going to handle one agenda item later on in the meeting. We have, as usual, our very, very, very talented and highly important part of our group, Kathleen Wentworth, in the audience with us tonight. Kathleen is Congresswoman Jackie Spears' senior advisor. She's a former United Airlines pilot, and she is very knowledgeable in all things airline related in San Francisco. I believe that Captain Sean Cook of United is with us tonight. Thank you very much for attending. I know United usually attends all of our meetings. We also have in the audience David Swanson, who is our San Francisco Airport Tower Manager, and he is really responsible for all the safe skies here in San Francisco. We also have 3 members with us tonight from the FAA. We've been working with the FAA over the last several months, since April, I believe, in communicating and sending them information about the roundtable and sending them information about what we do and some of the questions that we have that we would like them to address. I'm just going to introduce them briefly, but they are highlighted in an agenda item. I believe it's agenda item number 7. And the way we're going to handle questions of agenda item number 7 is I will receive written questions only from the public on this agenda item number 7. The questions that we are going to be posing the FAA representatives are in your agenda packet. They are pages 48 and 49. They have been prepared by the Roundtable team of our consultant, Jean and Justin from HMNH, Bert, Kathleen, myself, and others, so that we presented these questions to the FAA over 30 days ago so that they are prepared to address these concerns. But if you have questions that you'd like to ask, that's how we're going to handle that agenda item. So the three members that are with us tonight is Sean Kazika. He's the Operations Support Group Manager, Western Service Center out of Seattle. Sean? Okay. You're welcome. Thank you for being here, Sean. Tony DiBernardo, many of you have heard his name. He's the Terminal District Manager, Northern California, Air Traffic Control. And with him is Tanya Patterson. She is the Assistant Deputy Manager of Northern California Air Traffic Control. So they are prepared to answer and talk to us about the questions that are on pages 48 and 49. And James, I see that Sue Degree has come from Pacifica, and there's one other, it's a new face, I don't know.
Julia Mates, City of Belmont.
Belmont, thank you. Oh, how did you get here? You just scared me to death. I saw you come in. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to open it up to public comments. Again, I do have some public comment speaker cards. We're going to give you 2 minutes, and it has to be on items that are not on the agenda. If I perceive that they are kind of comments that are going to be addressed later on, I'll ask you to wait, okay? So the first one is going to be Doreen Gatelli. So Doreen, come on up.
Hello, Roundtable Committee and everybody else. As you know, I live in South San Francisco, and I am fortunate, I guess, to have the planes fly right over my house from like runway 28. And I was gonna get up here and just kind of say, you know, I get so frustrated with the planes flying over lately. It's like they keep me up at night. And they've been really, really low, and I've been calling and complaining, and it's like, what the heck for? I just wish that there was something that y'all could do, because it's just getting really frustrating, and it's bad enough that I've got, my father has been real sick and stuff, so I've been taking care of him, so I'm losing sleep over that. So now I've got like full sets of luggage underneath my eyes, okay? It's, you know, it's, it's besides just regular bags, but it's just, I don't even know why I call to complain anymore. It's like not even worth it, but that's it. I'm just gonna stop right there, so thank you.
Thank you. The next one is Liz Lopez, and then after Liz is Mark Schul.
Hi, everybody. I'm here from San Francisco, from Visitation Valley. So we're the southernmost portion of San Francisco. And as far as what I wanted to bring up was noise shifting, flight shifting. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody on the roundtable had a clear definition in their mind of what flight shifting and noise shifting was. Like if I asked somebody, would flight shifting be considered flight shifting or noise shifting if it only involved 10 flights, or if it only involved 20 flights, or is it anything over 50 or 100? I just wanted to know, do people understand like little idiosyncrasies like that? Is that, or is it considered noise shifting if it's shifting from one community to another, and the flights are going to be over 6,000, over 8,000? Is there a certain number where it becomes noise shifting? There's just like little idiosyncrasies that I'm just curious if people are just aware of, or if this hasn't been addressed. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
It might be interesting to add that component to the question that you're going to ask the FAA.
In question number 2. Thank you, Mark. Mark?
My name is Mark.
Actually, it's not on.
I want to bring up two concerns and a request. My first concern is a recent increase in noise from speed breaks at Eddy, and the second is about the new side-by waypoint. Starting several months ago, about 50% or more of the planes coming off the surface structure at Eddy are deploying air brakes. This seems to coincide with the Class B changes that the FAA is citing as part of the Select Committee Recommendation 1.1. United, Delta, and Alaska flying Airbus and Boeing aircraft show speeds between 256 and 270 knots after passing not one, but two mandatory 240-knot waypoints at Eddy and Narwhal, even after deploying the air brakes. Whatever the current design might be, it does not appear to be working. My second point is side-by. This waypoint was created as part of the FAA's response to Roundtable and Select Committee requests. Side-by's purpose appears to be to enable bodega and oceanic traffic to be merged not at Menlo, but on the other side of Palo Alto, such that all three procedures cut a concentrated path across the center of the city, defined by side-by at one end and Menlo on the other. I agree that the Roundtable does not try to move noise, but if you remain silent when the FAA's response to your request includes changes that move noise on others, it's almost the same thing. These changes add up. In April of 2000, SFO issued a press release stating, quote, 70 aircraft a day use the inbound route from Palo Alto to SFO. Today, there are 300 or more planes a day over Palo Alto. This is a 400% increase. Yet if you compare total ATC operations for SFO from April 2000, the same month as the press release, to April 2018, the increase in total SFO traffic is about 10%. In other words, the massive increase over Palo Alto is from traffic being moved from one point to another, not from overall SFO growth. I know that departures are super noisy and that NextGen gave everybody more noise, but no other community has gained this much, and is at all three arrival procedures cutting across the center of it, now defined by the new side-by to Menlo corridor.
Mark?
One sentence?
One sentence.
Yeah, for these reasons, two requests. You put Palo Alto on the roundtable so we can know about and address these issues. And two, that you insist that SFO install permanent noise monitors across Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Thank you all. So our next item is our consent agenda, and that would be items number 3 and number 4. I do have a speaker slip from Peter Grace on item number 4. Does any member of the roundtable wish to comment or pull either item number 3 or 4 on the consent?
I actually have a question on item 4.
So shall we let Peter go first?
Yeah.
Okay, Peter. 2 minutes, Peter. I got it. I like my.
Is this on then?
Yes, go.
No, I promise I'll be less than 2 minutes. My name is Peter Grace, and I live in Brisbane. I want to comment on the director's reports. Please turn to the March report for 2018. In your package, it's page 18. And it's titled Aircraft Noise Monitoring Systems on page 18. Can you look at that, page 18? You will see a table that lists the noise monitors and the average number of noise events at each monitor for March 2018. Many of you will have a monitor in your city. The noise monitors are set to a minimum threshold of 65 decibels. Please hold this page 18 to look at it. I'm now going to say 3 things that are important. The first is, I asked the SFO Noise Office for all the noise events recorded at Brisbane Monitor since January 2018. Secondly, the San Francisco Noise Office has enabled online viewing of the noise levels at each of the monitors listed on page 18. The information is archived online. So we've got the number of events, and also you can see it online. My curiosity was piqued, so I did a count on one particular bad day in Brisbane for a full 24 hours. The San Francisco Noise Office reported 55 events over 65 decibels. but my count was 77 events, a full 40% higher, a full 40% higher number of events. So I wrote to the San Francisco Noise Office and asked why there was such a large discrepancy between their results of 55 and my results of 77. Their reply, and this is important, the noise monitoring site has to have the noise event above the threshold for 8 seconds and cannot rise or fall fast more than 5.
Thank you, Peter.
So I would request that you study why this is happening and whether this discrepancy is acceptable or not. I don't think the 40% difference is acceptable.
Thank you. Anne?
Hi, thank you. I actually kind of went through these and I calculated which cities had how many air monitoring devices. And I've been on the roundtable a couple of years now, and we have a new city manager, interim right now. We may have another new city manager after that, but I'll be meeting with them to look at where the monitoring devices are and if they're capturing simply in-flight noise or ground-based noise. And I don't know if other cities want to, let's talk about it, because certain cities like Brisbane has 1 monitor, Daly City has 2, South San Francisco has 7. I would like to know the logic behind the placement of the air monitoring devices and which devices they're getting. So I just want to put that out there as information as I'm really diving down into this, trying to figure out the noise. Thank you.
So James, what would we work that through? Would that be in the technical working group? I know we're going through the initiative procedures, or would that be in another kind of subcommittee that we could do an ad hoc committee to do that study?
My thought would be maybe the technical working group is having as an agendized discussion to see, to do a deeper dive into that, give the Noise Abatement Office an opportunity to kind of understand what the question is, and then go from there. If that's something that we want to look at as a work program item, we can, but probably it's best to have that discussion at a technical working group.
Jean, do you have an opinion about this?
I do think it's part of the technical working group. That's a place to start. We could also decide as part of that, if we need to do more than just, how the monitors were placed, but it could be, we have some new people in here on the roundtable. It could be, like a short noise 101 or something like that as well.
Good.
That could help explain, the director's report a little bit better as well.
Anne, thank you very much. Any other members of the roundtable want to comment on anything since we've got this open right now? Otherwise, I'd call for the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes. So our regular agenda, ta-da, we have Doug Yekel. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I can actually combine items 5 and 6 together if that saves a little bit of time. So just a few updates from the airport. First of all, some updates regarding Bert's team. As you know, Bert's team is working through a bit of attrition. We're going to be posting a senior noise abatement specialist position in the next few days. And we're also proud to be hosting a summer college intern, Wing Kwok. Welcome, Wing. Wing is currently studying at San Jose State University, so good to have him with us, and thank you for joining us. Wanted to quickly talk about GBAS. This is the initiative the airport is funding, ground-based augmentation system, GPS landing technology. We had a good discussion on July 12th in the technical working group. Members of our team made a presentation to the group that was there. I would say that the city of Palo Alto was well represented with residents, which was good to see because this is a city that could potentially benefit from what GBAS has to offer. So we really want to push for that community participation in the technical working group. We see the technical working group as really the place to get into the weeds, into real deep discussions about these potential procedures and what some concerns might be. I think one of the takeaways is, we're looking at potential GBAS procedures for every one of our runways, but we want to prioritize procedures that are likely to be used the most. And what I mean by that is we're going to start by looking at procedures that are related to runways 28 left and right, because that's about 85% of our arrivals throughout the year. So we had some good dialogue there. Really, our next step is to prioritize the procedures that we want to submit to the FAA for evaluation. Before we do that, we want to find a good way to quantify the potential noise benefit that we might get out of some of these procedures, and that's going to take us a little bit of time to come up with the methodology. So our hope is that in the next technical working group in September, we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in a little bit more detail and then update the roundtable here. So I think timeline-wise, we're really talking probably end of the year before we're even in a position to begin talking about submitting some procedures to the FAA. And obviously, you've heard our commitment before. We want to engage with you. We want you to be on board with what we're looking to pursue here. And again, if we have any indication that a procedure has a detrimental impact on a community, we're not going to pursue that procedure. So I just want to reiterate that commitment. Lastly, you know that we launched officially on July 1st the Second Chance and Replacement Noise Insulation Program. This augments what we've been doing for 30 years. And what's different about these two are this gives folks who might have previously not participated the opportunity to get noise insulation, and then also for individuals that have had insulation that is failing through normal wear and tear, this is an opportunity. So since the launch, we've had 10 applications that we've received thus far. 6 of those are for the second chance and 4 are for replacement. Our next steps are we've got some reports to prepare for the FAA. And we expect that outreach will begin to these individuals later this year. I also want to put up on the screen a web URL address for anybody that's interested in applying for noise insulation. This will take you directly to an application site. The web address is coming up shortly.
Uh-oh. Restarting.
And again, our goal here is that people can go directly to this website and complete an application online to be evaluated for noise insulation. And there it is, flysfo.com/noise insulation.
Whoa, it went off. Oh,
Ever so briefly. There we go. Okay, so that's the website that we direct people to who are interested in applying for either the second chance or the replacement noise insulation. And that's all the updates that I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, then. Yes, I was going to open up to the roundtable for any comments or questions.
Yeah, I have a
Janet.
comment. So thank you for that. This is exciting. As we move forward and these get, actually, they start going into action, could we get a report back, if not from those who are currently going through it, to see how it's working? Because we obviously have more modern things to use today. So I would like to get a report back somewhere down the road from those that are actually receiving these upgrades or these mitigations to see how it's working for them.
Okay. Anyone? Sue?
Right, so the, can never remember how to say that, GBA?
GBAS.
GBAS. I believe once before I brought this up that I thought that the San Francisco Roundtable should make an official statement that we're concerned about this procedure, and we want to make very sure that it's not going to affect noise in any old places or new places. The reason I suggested that was because we went through this whole thing regarding Next Gen, and when we heard about Next Gen, it was going to be the world's greatest thing. And we all accepted that, oh, this is great. This is going to be the world's next greatest thing. And then when it actually happens, here we are having years and years of horrible pain and listening to people in pain. And then the second, so I still would, I know we're doing studies and I liked what we said there and I liked how the meeting went so far, but I'm concerned that like when we went back to say we had issues with Next Gen, the statement was you didn't write them down, you didn't send them in. So I don't want to be in that position again if it wasn't written down, wasn't in the proper whatever slot. So create a proper slot and put it in or something like that. The second part was, so the noise insulation thing, I was really happy about that because Northern Pacifica was one of the very first places that I was affected by noise, and we did a lot of lobbying and at that time got noise insulation, so I was really giddy happy. But when we applied, no, they're not in that scope. So I have very unhappy residents. I'm very disappointed, and so at the least we can do, I think, for areas like that that are now suffering more And they, at least those people, could have some kind of insulation where they've had it before, and their insulation is, how did you say it was, worn out or something like that? And we have a whole new section of Pacifica that is in noise and is not affected by this at all as well. So those are two major concerns.
Okay. Any other roundtable members? Al?
I imagine the criteria is in that website for qualifying, Doug?
That's correct, and individuals that submit, our vendor will evaluate their location. I think one of the things we talked about in a previous meeting is we obviously want to help the folks that have the greatest need. We want to help the folks that currently reside within that contour, but we're not going to discount folks that might be on the fringe or on the cusp or may have previously been within that contour. So we anticipate creating a wait list, if you will, because we're allocating a certain number of funds every year for this, and we want to use it, right? So if we find that folks within the contour have all been insulated or replaced insulation, and we've still got funds to allocate, we're going to go back to that wait list. So we'd encourage anyone, you know, we'll make the assessment and we'll keep these folks on the list, and we'll update you on the status of how many individuals we're insulating.
Ann, did you have?
Just a clarification. Second chance means people whose communities signed up for the program, but they didn't themselves sign up? Or are these for the couple of cities that chose not to be part of the program?
So these would be for homeowners who, just to back up a second, our longstanding program allows when a house changes hands, if the previous homeowner declined insulation and a new owner is in that property now, they are eligible to participate in the original program we've been doing since the 80s. What this is for is there's been no change in home ownership. It's the same homeowner, and for whatever reason, they had previously declined or not participated. This is their second chance to now receive insulation.
Excellent. And then insulation, just for clarification, if there's anybody new, we're talking about both insulation in attics as well as windows.
That's correct, and Bert, feel free to elaborate on that if you like.
Just because I'm going to go right to my community tonight when I get home, I want to make sure I get it right.
It's specific by household. So as they come in, they do the testing on the home. They may figure solid core doors and the windows will do it. It could mean they need to apply insulation in the attic. It's very household specific. Chimney dampeners, there's also many projects.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mark and then Terry. Or I could say Terry and then Mark, but you know, that's okay.
Either way. I was just wondering, for the most part, the first priority is residents that are within the noise contour, the 65 dBA, and then what kind of outreach is the airport doing to reach out to the communities that are in that? And if we can get a little update on what that outreach is to those households.
Yeah, we're in the process of identifying the dwellings that could be potentially eligible, and then we'll be looking to do some outreach around that. We always appreciate the support of this roundtable. You're a direct link to your residents, so that's part of one of the reasons we wanted to publicize this website, is because we do need your help as well in getting the word out.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Mr. Yackel, remind me the amount of money. I think Ivar had indicated that the Airport Commission agreed to an amount of money. What was that again?
Right, so we're budgeting $1 million annually for the second chance and replacement elements of this.
So if we went back in time and we were looking at maybe the program originally started some 25 years ago, is that?
Yeah, mid-'80s.
So $1 million would have gone a lot further back then. And I appreciate the effort, but in construction, we all know if we have projects in our hometowns or personal projects, $1 million doesn't go very far. So how many homes do you think that you can satisfy in a year?
Good question.
We're thinking that this funding will cover about 30 properties per year.
And I to have a tremendously long wait list, I guarantee you. But
well,
thank you for the
Well, I guess a question would be, what if you are really substantially oversubscribed? Is there any more funds that could be made available?
So this is really a starting point for us. We were hearing loud and clear from the residents that were attending this forum that there was an interest in replacing or giving folks a second chance. So this isn't set in stone. This is merely a starting place. I was hoping to see more than 10 people applying within a month of the program launch, but I think it tells us that we need to work collectively to get the word out about this. My hope is that we do have a long waiting list, that there is a demand for this. And again, this is really a starting point. We've certainly got the freedom and flexibility to reevaluate this as we move forward into coming years.
Okay, so I really encourage all the Roundtable elected officials here to reach out to your communities in every way that you know how to, that would be eligible, that you think. Anyone else? I do have some speaker slips on the item number 6, Ivar, so you're not finished yet. We have Robert Holbrook, and then Mark Scholl, and then Mary Jo Fremont, and those 3. So. Robert, you want to go first? 2 minutes, please.
GLS is the landing system that is built on GBAS. It stands for GBAS Landing System, and there are 6 proposed GLS paths teed up for delivery in 2020 on the FAA's IFP Gateway. One of the things that I think is important to appreciate is that GLS, at least with current technology, is going to mean rails. Every airplane following the GLS path is going to be following that particular rail, and if you're under that rail, that's going to be an issue. Now, the rails are more flexible, they can be bent more in multiple directions, and so that's all good. There may be some potential for mitigation, but again, if you're under those paths, it's a problem. The suggestion that I would like to make, and it's something that should be discussed as a broader agenda item in my view, is that the FAA be asked to undertake a R&D program that will enable dispersion, fine-grained dispersion, that allows the airplanes to be peanut buttered over, say, a 2-mile wide corridor and peanut buttered vertically as they come down as well. And if we were able to do that, then you wouldn't be asking one community to bear the flights that have been borne by a broader set of communities in many cases up until the introduction of that. This is going to be especially important if the FAA succeeds with time-based flow management, which would reduce the need for vectoring, and that would drive all the airplanes that are no longer vectored over a single corridor. If that were to happen in 7 years, this requirement for fine-grained dispersion is going to go through the roof. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mark Scholl from Palo Alto.
Thank you, Mark Scholl again. I've long viewed GBAS, specifically RNP to GBAS, which is, GBAS is a landing system, but there is a transition between the end of the star, the arrival star, and GBAS, which needs to be RNP. I think it is something that really could help reduce noise over the community, but I have 2 concerns about what I've seen so far of SFO's program. And so in general, thank you, and I think it's great. And I think all other airports in the Metroplex should use it. The first is that if you look at the plans, Boeing has stuff out, Delta has stuff out, the FAA has stuff out. You can find it in the magazines. There are a number of uses, and one of the main use cases they all liked was essentially an efficiency use case where you make 28 right as high as possible, 28 left as low as possible, do a displaced threshold. To get vertical separation, you can land 2 more planes an hour and use 2 less controllers. That would be bad. So we want to see something where it's really used for what you say it would be used for, is to reduce noise rather than you get just a couple more seats on the plane in airport terms. The second thing is my concern is, my current understanding is that the GBAS team probably over time can make the approaches higher, but they have to meet up with the arrival stars. And currently they don't, and there's a discussion with the FAA about not really being willing to change those. So even if they can get the flights higher and the arrival stars are down here, that's not going to help Palo Alto or any of the other, in the mid-peninsula communities. So that's something I hope you can go back to the FAA, perhaps with congressional support, and say, hey, we have to work both sides of this thing, else we're building a bridge that doesn't meet in the center. So those are my two concerns so far. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Mary Jo Fremont from Palo Alto.
My name is Mary Jo Fremont. I'm also from Palo Alto. So I want to thank the airport about the effort on GBAS. I really want to applaud them for making noise reduction their #1 goal, because that is the most critical thing. And that's what you have to keep in mind. There are plenty of details, as some of the speakers have mentioned, but that's a really good goal, and thank you for doing that. I also want to thank you for seeking community input and not restricting community to just the cities around the table, because GBAS is going to benefit people who are affected by arrivals, and most cities affected by arrivals are not sitting at this table tonight. So thank you for that. This could be GBAS, you know, I completely understand the member of the roundtable being concerned about overselling GBAS, completely get that. It can be oversold, but I think if you do keep your eyes on dispersion, on reducing noise, on paying attention to what the community is telling you, because we know we experience noise every day, I think we have the first real opportunity to make a dent at that noise. And the FAA is part of it, because GBAS cannot exist in a vacuum. These arrival procedures will need to connect in an effective way if we want to get the biggest bang for the buck. So thank you for doing it anyway.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Okay. I'm going to close this agenda item if there's no other comments from our members. And we will go on to item number 7, which is the discussion with the FAA regarding questions that we have provided to them. And they are on your agenda packet, pages 48 and 49. There are only 4 questions. But I would venture to say that any one of those questions could take us all night. So I don't want to be the one to make the executive decision about which we start from. I would, if there is a burning question that a roundtable member might want to ask first, or if from our consultant, or maybe Miss Kathleen Wentworth, who helped us craft them. The first question takes up a whole page. So maybe it looks like it's the most detailed. We could start with that. So thank you, Sean. I love it. He gave me a head nod. So if you want to go to your agenda packet and look at the question number 1, it talks about the RNAV overlay for the offshore departure, and I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Thank you. Are you going to reiterate the question, or are you just going to let everybody read off their own agendas? It might be a good idea just to kind of rephrase the question so everyone's on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the question is that the roundtable has proposed that an RNAV overlay be designed for the existing conventional offshore departure. And it is one of our recommendations in the initiative. It's B35. And the FAA, in their response to us, Appendix D 2.35, cites that there is no technical reason why this can't be done. And then we inserted in the agenda packet the rationale that the FAA gave us. But we believe that the use of the offshore departure path in a new RNAV procedure would do 3 things. It would serve the purposes of the national airspace system by using satellite technology. It would respect a historical flight procedure path, or paths, plural, and it would reduce the additional noise impact to residents that is increased by the use of NextGen on the stick and the young transition path when compared to the offshore departures largely over water flight path. Okay, so now that we believe the FAA has determined a safe path for the young transition while avoiding the special use airspace, how can this new knowledge be applied to the creation of an RNAV overlay for the offshore departure path? and then asking what other technical reasons, if any, prohibit the creation of this overlay. And there you go.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you setting the stage for me. So there's a few different things going on here, as you guys can tell. So we talked a little bit about the conventional departure procedure, the offshore, and there's a few RNAV departure procedures in there as well. So the idea behind, I guess the premise of the original question was to have more traffic on the offshore route and use an RNAV overlay to do that. Well, the young transition is currently not used. That is going to change on September 13th. That's a Thursday. So they're going to start using that transition. The reason it was delayed, and you might see it if you track the notices to airmen, you might see that it's actually published but NOTAM not available. The reason is it didn't provide the proper separation from the warning areas out over the water. So that's been remedied, and the new amended young transition will publish on September 13th. The original question, well, there's no technical reason why you couldn't create an RNAV overlay for the offshore departure procedure. However, I'm not sure it actually alleviates your original concern, because the same restrictions for using that procedure based on the military warning areas being active would apply to the new RNAV overlay just as it does the offshore departure procedure. So while there isn't a specific reason why we couldn't do that, there currently doesn't look to be a benefit to doing it, either on the operational side or, in your case, your original premise, it wouldn't match what you guys were looking for. The same restrictions would apply.
Okay. So will you take a question or two from the roundtable body?
I'll do my best.
Okay. Does any of the roundtable members want to comment on this and ask Sean a question? Sue, we'll let you go
I'd like
first.
a clarification when you said something about warning. Were you referring
The
to
military
the military
airspace
section? Is that what you're?
Yes, ma'am. It's called Warning Area 285, and it's broken down into different sections, but it's military airspace that's offshore. And many of the departure procedures and arrival procedures, in fact, are designed to avoid that airspace, because there's what we call hazardous flight activity going on in those warning areas that could present a hazard to aircraft that are traveling through there. So, yeah.
Okay. Kathleen, do you have a comment on this? I wonder, maybe, you know,
You want to see the current procedure, or what are you looking to see? Elizabeth, do you have something available? I mean, I have the procedure here, but I don't know if the roundtable is prepared to display it.
Bert? Bert usually can display anything, and he can draw flight paths at a drop of the hat.
I think,
mean, it's
Kathleen,
wonderful.
you just want to see the departure procedure?
What we're talking. So my apologies. This is kind of a new procedure for us, and we will become better prepared next time
And Kathleen,
with
I
graphics
think
and
I know
things.
where you're trying to go. You're trying to show
Yes.
the connectivity between all the procedures in the warning area. So there's not really a good way to do that right now. What we could show is you could pull up the sectional chart and show everybody where the warning area is at, to give everybody an idea where the actual airspace is at. The amended Young hasn't published yet, so it's not really in the charts to see it yet. We could show the offshore departure procedure, but that may be a better follow-up question for a later meeting, where we could actually show the procedures when they're published. And having known that if we would have known you had that question, we probably could have presented a graphic that would have given that fidelity. So we can probably take an hour to do that if we get together again.
That is possibly something that would be more beneficial, rather than having Bert struggle to pull it up. And I think from our position, we probably should have been more prepared. I'm sorry, Sean. Oh, look, Bert. Wow, Bert.
So Elizabeth can.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really, so this tells part of the story. It shows you, so you're looking at the sectional chart, and it shows you the airport, and it shows you the warning areas offshore. What it doesn't show is the departure procedures and how they relate.
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit of an idea, but it's not really, I don't think it's really what Kathleen is looking for. So I think we have people that do a lot of this type of work, put things on Google Earth backgrounds to give everybody an idea of where everything's at. And that's probably something we should look at doing next time, knowing that we want to actually show that.
Absolutely.
Which lines are the warning lines?
I just, I want to make it clear to the public, I am not taking questions from the floor. I'm only taking questions on this item number 7, which includes these 4 questions in a speaker slip. Okay?
I think we're good, yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yes. Ricardo, here.
And I hate to oversimplify, because, but so what we're saying is the current procedures, you're taking off and flying over the peninsula. We were asking, can we go out over the ocean? The answer is no, because they're military restriction zones. Is that correct?
So the original question was, can you do an RNAV overlay of the offshore departure procedure, right? And the offshore departure procedure is limited in its use because of the military airspace out there. And the same restriction would apply if you made an RNAV overlay of it.
But so, just for the layman, RNAV overlay means they would be flying further out over the ocean versus over land.
So no, overlay means, so basically you take, so let's just pretend that this straight line is the old procedure, the offshore departure. An overlay is literally line for line. So you would basically take that line that was an old procedure, ground-based navigation aids, and then you would create a new procedure, RNAV, right over it, the same thing. So basically it's flying the same flight path. That was what the original question asked. And the answer really is, yes, it could be done, but it wouldn't, number one, there's not an operational need for it, and number two, it doesn't really meet the premise of your question, which was to try to do something around the military airspace. The same restrictions would apply in either case. So it doesn't really meet the
right, thank
request.
I think we have another comment. Do you want to add to that?
Well, just what he's trying to say is the new procedure, if it was built, the RNAV procedure would be limited to the amount of flights that are on it today on the conventional procedure. It wouldn't allow any more airplanes to be pushed offshore than are flying in today.
I see.
They would just have an RNAV procedure rather than a ground-based navigation.
So you wouldn't notice a difference. The pilots would be flying a satellite-based procedure, but from your perspective, where you're seeing the airplane, hearing the airplane, you wouldn't notice a difference. The tracks would be nearly identical.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the roundtable. Anne has a question.
Actually, it's very nice to have our new visitors. This is recorded. We need to get you a microphone so that anybody watching from home
next time
can hear
they
that.
speak, I'll walk over there. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Elizabeth, I have a
So,
question.
yes, Diane.
So the stick young then does improve what we wanted? It gives us something more than what we want? Our nav doesn't, but the stick young does?
Well,
Am I
no, the
missing
stick,
something?
those are RNAV procedures, yeah. And what they do is they provide the proper separation from the warning area. So it meets the air traffic control requirements for separation. So, and those are RNAV procedures. And those procedures are already published. The change is going to be the young transition is going to change a bit to make sure that they stay the required, and I think it's 3 miles from that warning area.
Okay.
So it will allow then for more planes to take off in that direction?
I think
It doesn't change the amount of aircraft that are going to fly the route.
we might have to ask a different question.
Elizabeth, we have a question.
Oh, Harvey, yes.
I'm very concerned about the coast side. I've got more and more complaints from people, El Granada, Half Moon Bay, even south of Half Moon Bay. Can you explain about this military restriction? Is it possible to change the hours or how far out over the ocean or whatever that can be done to reduce the number of flights flying straight over El Granada, Half Moon Bay, and further south?
Simple answer is no. The military is the using agency for that airspace. There's a very elaborate process that we have to go through to actually create that type of airspace. Warning areas are usually offshore. In this case, these warning areas have been established for a long time, and they're built laterally and vertically to allow military high-performance aircraft to maneuver out there and do things that would be unsafe for aircraft that weren't participating. So even the FAA, we don't send anybody through there. The military controls that airspace except for a few hours on the weekends and at night, and other than that, we keep everybody out of there. So as an agency, we couldn't do that. You could send your request to the military. I wish you luck, sir. Let me know how that goes.
I have a quick question.
Okay, Janet?
Just a quick one.
Yes.
So, thank you for your report. Thank you for being here, but I would also like to request that any time that you come before us, you bring visual aids. Be prepared with anything you can, because as you see, it's very beneficial for us to at least have something to see for the roundtable and for our audience.
And
so please
I
just
think,
bring something.
it's part of our responsibility also, since we're providing the
Exactly. So
you
as
know,
a team,
the-
let's make sure we get this.
Yes.
right.
We'll work together. Thank you.
Well taken, Janet. Thank you. So I will go to a much broader question. It's quite open-ended. Our question number 2, it makes a statement that increased noise over areas that had heretofore never experienced overhead aircraft flights. Okay? So the question is, why are residents in the Visitation Valley area of San Francisco and residents in Pacifica, and I should have said in Half Moon Bay, the coastside, are now suffering from aircraft overhead noise, where historically noise from aircraft was either none or much less than currently being experienced? Can you kind of give us some context on that?
It's really hard without a little bit more information. So I think the question, as written, mentioned Visitation Valley. In order to do that, and we would love to look into what's going on there, but we're going to need some more information from you guys, some more specifics.
Okay.
Because we really we try to nail down and look at a very pinpointed geographic location. So if you can give us more specific information, again, through the roundtable to us and partnership with the Airport Noise Abatement Office, we can definitely try to look and see that. But as it stands now, the way the question was written, I don't think we can really give you any information because we don't have anything to go on. It was pretty broad, yeah.
Pretty broad.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Sue?
So when I was going through the packet, once again, it struck me that the word congestion comes up so much. So when we're asking these questions, could you take into account congestion when it comes to whatever answers you're going to give? Like, not just a flight path, but congestion, meaning, in my mind, is the number of flights that are able to be going one after another at any given moment. So I'm assuming that might make part of the answer important.
Well, in a general sense, the things that we're talking about don't relate in any way to, I think the word we would use instead of congestion would be capacity. None of the things that we're really talking about have an impact on capacity. So
Capacity meaning the number of
the
flights.
number of flights, yeah. That's
Okay.
a totally different subject. The stuff we're talking about here is not really applicable to that.
Okay.
Well, can I pursue that a little bit more?
Sure.
So am I understanding that the number of flights, one right after another, does not contribute to more noise if there was less one right after another one, or further distance?
Well, when you're talking about one after another, there could be a lot of different things going on, right?
Right.
You have, when you have an airport, especially a busy airport like San Francisco International, there are scientific studies that go on to see how long an aircraft is on a runway, how many aircraft can take off in an hour, what's the throughput. There's a lot of science that goes into that. So that's why that the capacity / congestion and the way you phrased it is a pretty broad subject. I think where you're going though is when you're talking on these specific routes here, capacity in our mind as air traffic control is we're a safety organization. And so we have a mandated set of separation requirements
Right.
we have to comply with. So that is our capacity.
I think so. James, I think we lost his microphone.
Requires separation between aircraft. And it's different based on the aircraft. That's basically our capacity. We don't build a procedure, like, for example, we talked about the offshore. We don't build an offshore departure and say, this is how many aircraft can fly this. The system doesn't work that way. It's based on our separation standards and what an airport can or cannot handle. Yes. showing on.
There you
Okay.
go.
Okay, all right.
I'm loud enough anyway. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think I understand that. So FAA's main job, which we're happy about, is safety. And so you're really not looking at any components to weigh or measure whether or not what's safe actually means a certain amount of noise.
Well, we're a safety organization, you're right. When we also aim for efficiency, obviously. We have an obligation to you guys as the taxpayers to make sure your flight's on time and your aircraft uses as least amount of fuel as possible. However, we have to balance that with safety. So this, what I'm getting at is the stuff that we're talking about here, capacity and volume doesn't really come into play in this situation.
Volume meaning noise.
So
Volume meaning the amount of airplanes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to summarize for everyone about this question and what Sean has asked us to do, especially in there were 2 cities that were listed here, but it was.
I'm sorry, I only saw Visitation Valley.
I know, but Pacifica was. But
Okay, sorry about that.
so because they've really been pummeled, we can pull together some specific data and history of where the noise is and maybe submit that to y'all, okay? All right. So let's move on to question number 3, which is we're going to take all questions at the end, so we're not interrupted, okay? No, I know, at the end of number 7. We're still on number 7, Peter. Is that number 7?
Number 2.
Good, okay. So, Sean?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know anything about Surfer, Big Sur routes? A little bit? So, so the question is, I feel like I don't know, Vanna White or somebody. The question is, can you give us an update and details on the status of changes on the current Surfer 3 flight paths and how those changes will be or are being implemented? And also, can you update us on the new entry on the FAA IFP gateway, Surfer 4, that appears to be scheduled for December 2019? And then we included a link to something. And hopefully you were able to open the link.
Yes.
Okay.
So my mic keeps going out here, so if I cut out, let me know, and I'll
Maybe
talk
we'll
about
get another mic just in case. Or take one of take a table mic.
Maybe I'll just sit right here next to this young lady.
That's very
Can everybody hear me?
That's really nice.
All right,
Thank
now I
you.
have a chair. This is even better. Okay, so a couple different questions there, right? So as far as the Surfer 3, which is currently in use, and the Big Sur overlay, we had put out an update a couple months ago that our work group got together on May 8th, and they encountered some criteria and design concerns, and they're working through those. There is no update to that. That is still the most current information available. All right, so that's part 1 of your question. Part 2 of your question, I think, is on the Surfer 4. So I think the genesis of this is a lot of people maybe in this room and in the community, the wider community, are signed up for alerts on the IFP information gateway. So anytime there's a procedural change at whatever airports you sign up for, in this case San Francisco, you're going to get an auto-generated alert. And it's a great system, but one of the downsides of that system is you're getting an alert that something's changing, but it doesn't really tell you what's changing. So that's why we're here. So I think there was a little bit of concern when everyone saw that the Surfer 4 was scheduled for publication December. I think is like 2019. I think is the date they have in there. So I'm here to tell you that it's going to be okay, because the Surfer 4. The only change on the Surfer 4 is a fixed name. So there is a fix on the Surfer 3 called Norwal. There's also a fix located pretty close by called Gnarly. When the controllers and the pilots are communicating on the radios, there's been some confusion, and those fixed names sound pretty similar. Anytime, and our airline pilots can hopefully back me up here, anytime we have those situations, for safety reasons, we change one or both of them. In this case, we're going to change the name of Norwal to a 5-letter fixed name that has yet to be determined. Oh. The fix where it's located won't change. There won't be changes to flight tracks or anything. Yeah, there's really nothing
Sean,
to show.
he's going to take your mic and fix it.
Okay. Yeah. So you see up to the towards the top, you see Norwal. And then further down, you see gnarly. We're going to change the name of narwhal. That's the only thing that's going to change. Nothing else on that procedure will change. That's it. So that's the downside of getting those alerts is you sometimes it makes you think something's going to happen. Really, it's really a one-offer like that.
All right, I'm going to ask the Roundtable board if anyone has a comment or a question about that topic, the Surfer 4. Okay. Okay, this is the fourth and the last one. You know, we're just kind of blasting through these, aren't we? We should have given you more questions next time. So, north arrivals assigned to the historical Bodega East downwind. So that's the topic. Our question is, please elaborate on FAA's response to our recommendation that the FAA will utilize the Bodega East downwind procedure to the extent, quote, operationally feasible, end quote. What percentage of the time does the FAA believe that this procedure can be used? And here's some background. Our recommendation in the initiative was to maximize the use of procedures that route aircraft over the bay when arriving from the north, such as the Bodega East downwind, to avoid overflying noise-sensitive communities during nighttime hours. This is really, you know, an issue for the health and safety. It's the Roundtable's opinion that the use of this procedure can be monitored within the SFO's noise and operating monitor systems, the NOMS. Okay?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'll answer part 2 first because that's the easier one. And I'll say that the noise monitoring systems, we really don't have anything to do with that. So any questions related to NOMS, you've got to go to the San Francisco International Airport's Noise Abatement Office. We don't regulate that. We don't determine the placement of those or anything.
Okay.
So that was the easy one.
Okay.
So we'll go back to the bodega. So what it means, and I'm going to use the word dynamic, but basically to the extent operationally feasible, it's really hard to give a percentage because it's not consistent. It varies all the time. It depends on how many other aircraft are coming in on the other arrival procedure into San Francisco and another one into Oakland. So really, it's whenever the controllers have what we call a hole on the route where they can fit somebody on the east downwind. That is not, it's not consistent throughout the day, throughout the week. It depends on weather. It depends on volume. There's so many different variables in there. So I think you guys are looking for a little more fidelity around it, but it's really hard because it really is dynamic. The bottom line is the controllers, you know, with safety as their #1 priority, are always doing their best to give this route when they can. And I think the Northern California TRACON actually changed the language in their standard operating procedure recently to make it more, I guess, robust, to make sure that the controllers understand that this is something that really is a preferred route. Again, safety is always going to come first, so they're going to give it as often as they can.
Well, that's good. That's good news. That because we've always, I think we all have believed that the air traffic controllers have a lot of power, obviously, to either fly a procedure more quietly or choose a procedure that will be helpful instead of just doing it by rote or without thinking about the people on the ground. So that was my comment. And
yeah,
you're gonna
just to add to
Oh.
that, as San Francisco Airport can attest to, especially during the summertime, the traffic count, which is arrivals and departures at San Francisco, is running about 1,420 to 1,430 operations a day. So that's a combination of arrivals and departures. And the unique thing about San Francisco that has changed over the last few years quite a bit is that we are not running a period of highs and lows of activity levels. It is a consistent level of arrivals and departures hour by hour throughout the day. When we were able to run more east downwinds through there were periods of time when there were lulls in the traffic, in the arrivals, where we didn't have as many coming in. We'd have periods of times where hours would go by where we would have maybe 20 airplanes that would arrive. We're averaging a consistent flow in and a consistent flow out. And that means our busiest route that's coming in is on the Diamond. That's everywhere east of the West Coast. right? Everything else is coming from the north or from the south, and everything east of us, which is the entire country, is coming in on the diamond. And that's why that's the flow we keep going all the time. That's the one we never stop, because if we stop it, we start backing up airplanes all the way into Salt Lake's airspace and beyond sometimes. And any pilot in here knows who flies in from the east, they've always got that free put. And if they're coming in from the north, they're more than likely going to hold over Point Reyes if we have any kind of activity that's going on. That's our first place. The last place we'll ever hold is over Modesto, which is the arrival that we're coming in from the east, because that's going to cause problems that'll ripple all the way back. The downwind procedure, if we have an Oakland arrival coming in and we're on the east downwind, we create an opposite direction situation. An arrival going to San Francisco and arrival going to Oakland that are head-on with each other. So that's a safety situation that we just cannot tolerate. The controllers will always try to fill a hole the best they can in the San Francisco flow. So if there's available spot to bring somebody, to shortcut them, to bring them in on the east side, they're going to do that to fill that hole, because they just don't have that many holes to play with anymore. And it isn't something that they have a choice on whether or not they're going to utilize it or not. It's when it's available and they have the hole and there's no competing traffic, they're going to do it. But all of those things have to come together and unite right at the same time. And if you don't have that, it can't be used. It's nothing we can tell them, do it more often, or you're not utilizing this enough, because they want to keep that flow going as much as feasible, because otherwise their work gets harder. And they have to start vectoring airplanes that get their spacing, and they don't want to have to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'm going to bring it to the roundtable members for any comments before I do the speaker slips. Robert and Mary Jo, you need to write your question on this, because I will read them. Oh, okay, fine. No, we're going to do it this way. Yes?
At the last working group, we went over the last of the recommendations that we made, or responses we made to your recommendations, including ones that you said couldn't happen. And one of those was reduction, or almost reduction, of the use of 10 for departures
Anne,
entirely.
excuse me. They're only prepared to talk to us about the 4 questions that we answered.
And yet there's not one question that deals with ground-based noise or
Anne,
takeoff noise.
excuse me, we're not going to talk about that right now. We will talk about that.
And this is why I brought it up at the working group
we
committee.
Will talk
we are
about
not
it
bringing these issues up.
Anne?
Okay, Elizabeth?
We are not, Elizabeth.
Anne, the FAA is here to answer the 4 questions, and that's all they are prepared to answer. Those are the conditions upon which they would come, okay? And so that's where we are. If we want to put that type of question into the mix for next time, then we will. We'll talk about that. And that's just the way it is.
Elizabeth?
Okay, Diane.
So I have a question. Going back to number 2, we can ask questions about any of the ones we haven't.
Okay.
Yes. So I realize that we didn't provide reports. I'd just like to, when were these questions given? Because we got a lot of reports here. So I'm wondering why there wasn't a, hey, we'll need reports in order to answer that when we come to you on August 1. And if I may, and if we, what reports were needed, what is the time frame, and then let's get our friends back here. So
Exactly.
We can respond to that one.
So they have agreed to come back at our roundtable meetings, and hopefully I can get a confirmation that they will come to our next technical working group meeting, which is going to be scheduled in September. And at that point, we can pull together more questions. We had a very short time frame to under which, like, it was like 2 days. It was 2 days, James and Bert called us and said that. So it was not time, okay? And so we can poll the roundtable body for the next round of questions. Does that sound like a good idea? That you can submit to James, and we'll work it through with the consultant and formulate them, okay?
Yeah, I'd just like you to see you get an answer to question 2. So, and I know we got a lot of reports.
We have a lot of reports that we need to pull together, yes. Okay. Sean, you ready to talk some more, or do you?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure I reiterate one point. As you mentioned, the future attendance. We want to make sure that everybody here gets the most out of this. And one of the ways we do that is by asking you, and I appreciate you doing that this time, asking you to give us your questions as far in advance as you can. That way we get the right people here. Otherwise, you're stuck with me. So what we have to balance is the people that work in our air traffic facilities, especially the managers, we're really resource constrained. And we, as much as we'd love to participate in everything we're asked to participate at the subject matter expert level, it's really not possible. So we really try to balance our desire to be part of these groups and interact with you guys, but also the fact that we have to make sure that we're running a safe operation. So anytime you can get us your questions in advance, we're gonna do our best to get you the person or people who can speak very intelligently to the questions you're asking.
Okay. And Bert. Yes, yeah. So, I know.
At least 30 days, please.
And our next scheduled roundtable meeting is 60 days. And our next scheduled technical working group meeting is September 12th? Yeah. So there we go. Unfortunately, this is our first try at this. It's not perfect. I see where, we've fallen short, but we had very short period of time, and we worked with Kathleen and our consultants to formulate what we felt was some pressing questions. Mark.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Ms. Pappen, thank you for your observations. I have similar ones. Sean, you seem like a very personable gentleman, and I'm glad you're here this evening with your colleagues. But these questions were given on the 29th of June. And to come to the meeting and tell us that we didn't give you enough in number 2 to be able to have any meaningful response, quite frankly, was a little disappointing. I do appreciate the answer and the understanding. I'm here to gather information so I better understand the dilemma that we're all facing on a regular basis. So I appreciate the information that your colleagues shared on number 4. But if we're all wet on a question like 1, you need to give us some cover and tell us that we're going in the wrong direction. I mean, we all want to understand and be more knowledgeable, and you can definitely help with that. But we have to have better communication before we come to these public meetings. This is a little embarrassing, but it is a good first effort.
Good first effort.
Well,
and
let
we
me
don't
just
want to
say,
make them go away mad.
Elizabeth, I appreciate all your effort, because this really was, when I talk about resources, it's not just in facilities, it's with my group in Seattle too, and we have so many areas around, California, the entire Western Service area. We're trying to be engaged with the community as much as we can. So we get questions and requests for participation from all over the place, and we're really scrambling and doing the best we can with what we can. We really had to make a decision for this meeting. We could have asked to not participate tonight and taken a little bit more time to dig in. We made the decision to come here with what we had because we really want to engage with you guys. We think it was more important for us to get the ball rolling now and engage than it would be to wait a month or 2 and have a pretty picture to show you guys. So point well taken, I appreciate it, but we're balancing it all, and we'll get there. Thanks.
If I may, Elizabeth.
Yes, Diane.
I've been coming since January, and I've been going through all this technical stuff, like Mark said, trying to come up to speed. And there's a wealth of information in one of the major airports in the western United States. I think we can get a little more love. So I'm looking forward to that. But I've been coming for a long time, and I have not seen you, and I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to a long and meaningful relationship.
As long as you're nice to me.
Oh, I'll be nice.
Diane, San Mateo County, City of San Mateo. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to go to the speaker slips I have and read their questions. I have one more here. Okay. Peter Grace from Brisbane. The question is, for number 2, why are stick planes turning lower over the peninsula in 2018 than in 2010? He has analysis and graphics to show, or he would like to have analysis and graphics to show. Oh, he does. I knew he had that. I did, because I think I've seen it before. But I'll just give you an opportunity to kind of talk to that.
So that's the
stick
perfect,
planes lower. Why are they turning lower now than they did in 2010?
so that's a perfect example of why we need to get as much information as we can ahead of time. Because I could look at what you have and take a guess. It wouldn't be a good guess, so I won't. But if you give us the opportunity to dig in and do the research ahead of time, we can come really prepared to speak and give you the information that you're really looking for.
Okay, so
that's a good example.
That's number two. We asked a very broad question. We weren't specific enough. We didn't give enough data. Okay, our bad. Okay, Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto, asks about the Bodega East. Did the FAA analyze the differences in the timing of arrivals on Bodega East versus the Diamond? Because Diamond is typically not busy between midnight and 9 a.m. That kind of is different than what Tony was saying, that it's always. And then number two, what is the minimal amount of separation, vertical and lateral, for opposite direction operations? In other words, what's the minimum distance between Bodega East arrival and an Oakland arrival? Tony, you probably
Well, we're talking about a lot of different things. I'm gonna let Tony take this one.
You can kind of.
So that's a non-standard route. That's a vectored route, so there is nothing established between those two routes. The routes that we use that are established when we do use an opposite direction operation out of San Francisco, where we're departing on the 10s and arriving on 2-8 is 25 miles. So you can't have an airplane within 25 miles of the airport before you can depart somebody. If anybody's inside of 25, they cannot depart off that runway. But there is no establishment between two airborne routes, because one is a procedural route that's established, one is a vector on an airplane that's going opposite direction. It's an uncontrolled situation and a hazard to safety. So we don't allow the controllers to operate in that. The time frames? No, there's not much traffic going on after midnight. There's not much traffic going on from the north after midnight either. So.
That's just true.
Okay.
All right.
So anyway, yeah.
The airport can provide the board here all the numbers they want for airplane and activities of arrivals after midnight.
Okay.
So on the mid-shift arrival, Bert has all of that information. He knows exactly when airplanes land and when they depart. So that's not an issue. The issue that was in question here is an opposite direction operation, which we don't authorize and we don't allow.
Okay.
Because we can't control it, and it's a hazard to safety.
Thank you. I have two speaker slips here with no names on it, but a question that says, will the FAA work with the SFO GBAS team to make sure that the RNP to GLS procedures can meet at altitudes that optimize noise reduction?
I think that's something you should put in your minutes and submit to us in writing.
Yeah,
Yep.
because that was not part of the questions. Okay, this question is from Pacifica, but does anybody want to take ownership of it? Regarding the offshore restriction, how close is it to the shoreline currently in the Stick and Westla departures that fly directly over Pacifica, Half Moon Bay, and the coast? Can these departures be moved slightly to the west so that they are over water but not impede on the military airspace? Again, we're wanting to, push stuff off the coast and not down our coastline.
So two parts. So the first part is I'm going to ask you to talk to the airport, because if you're looking at where a procedure is in relation to a geographic point on land, the airport can help you with that. They can tell you exactly where it's at. To your second point, it's really hard to answer those types of questions because you're talking about one procedure, right? You're talking about moving one procedure, but it's almost like looking at something in a vacuum, because you also need to look at how that procedure interacts with every other procedure to every other airport around there. So it's not a simple answer. So, that's something that you'd have to submit to us in writing. We'd have to dig into. But yeah, I think it was just asking about moving routes, and it's really when you get into the discussion of moving a route, you're really not looking at the whole picture. You're really not answering the question that you're asking, because you need to look at everything else that that route interacts with. So saying, can you move this route? That's not really the question we need to be asking. So you'd have to probably give us some more information as to what you're looking to do.
Sean, can you kind of phrase a question for us?
If the question is how close can an airplane be from the warning area, it's 3 miles. You cannot be any closer than 3 miles. If you're asking how close is the eastern edge of the warning area to the shoreline, that is depicted on a map, and I don't have that off the top of my head, but it's very easy to find out by just looking at a map and determining where the boundary is and where the shoreline is.
Okay.
What Sean said, though, is I don't know where that line that you want to draw is in relation to the warning area, but clear of other paths if there are other. That's where we would have to have that in advance, something requested so that we could have our experts in airspace and procedures look at not only that route and the feasibility of that, but any competing routes that may be involved with it.
That might be a really good question that we can tease out and formulate. Okay. One more from Robert Holbrook, and it said on April 27th, the FAA told Bay Area Congress members that they would provide an update on the Big Sur overlay within 90 days. That date has now passed. Does the FAA have a revised date, or should we ask our Congress members?
So we're still working with the 3 members, SU, Panetta, and Spear, on getting that update out. So as of right now, there's no change. Like I said when I answered the original question, we're hoping to have something out soon, though. Thank you.
Okay. And that's all of the public questions, and I'd say thank you very much. And we don't know if we'll see you or another representative. Is that correct? In September?
It depends on, we're going to have to talk offline about that and exactly what you're looking for and what questions we'll be here to answer. But I'm not going to commit to anything right here. We're going to have a more detailed discussion.
Well, I would like to thank every member of the FAA to have come here tonight, but clearly this is our first iteration with this, and I think that we have lessons to learn from the experience tonight, and we have a little bit more breathing room, and we know what the ground rules are, because the ground rules were kind of not forced on us, but I mean, you know, given to us at kind of a late date, and so we were scrambling. But anyway, we really thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, okay. Thank you. We will go on. We have 3 more agenda items, and then other matters. So, item number 8 is, and we have plenty of time to go over these. Item number 8 is our follow-up from our July 12th technical working group meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Jean. Our consultants are really managing this expertly. We're going through tediously, I should say, item by item, all of the responses from the initiative to try to understand. And I'm really hoping that we will have members of the FAA present at our next technical working group meeting to help us figure all this out. So, Gene?
Sure. So we, the first part of the technical working group is really with the GBAS information that was provided. Probably took up about half of the working group, but we really appreciate it. That is the place that, you know, that information ought to be conveyed so that the technical working group can then bring it back to the roundtable. So we very much appreciated that. Then we went back through, kept going through the measures on the initiative, and got to all but 3 of those, and the last 3 I think are going to go pretty quick at the next group meeting. And what we plan to do at the next technical working group is likely go back over those things that we had after we go through the last three, which would be the first few minutes, I believe, maybe a half hour of the technical working group, and then look over the list of items that we come up with. So we'll have that list prepared to go over and begin to start to prioritize the work that results from our recommendations through the technical working group.
And bring that all back to the full board as to what actions we can take to formulate more questions and more clarity, maybe reformulate some of the questions that were asked in the initiative, and see how we can measure what metrics, correct? The
Yes.
things that they said that
Determine
they can do.
how we're going to then proceed with those. And I would assume, based on, you know, the FAA and the process that they want to go through, that we would have questions coming from that. Maybe not the next time, because we got to, you know, get them more formulated. I'm sure there's other questions we can come up with for them, or specific ones that we can before then. But so yes, that's the plan.
I'll bring it to the roundtable board. How many of y'all were at the last technical working group meeting? I think there was Sue, Janet, Ann, not many. So it really is your opportunity, and I know it's held in the afternoon, but and everybody has other commitments and jobs and things. I don't know if we want to consider changing. Well, we have a hard time getting the room. Is that right, James?
Yes, so that particular first and second Thursday of every other month seems to work out well to utilize the room. So that's why it's been that way. And it's also been every other month to allow staff to be able to have enough time to prep for it. Because we really want to leverage that group as a standing group that's always going to meet, and that also provides a really good opportunity for the airport to come in and bring in items such as GBAS and have that as a running item in there. So so that's where we're at so far. It's really either the first or second Thursday of every other roundtable month. And during the day, we can try to explore other options, but it really is, this room does make it a lot easy for a lot of different logistics.
So can I just ask maybe a general show of hands, or if it were held later in the afternoon instead of 1:30 to 4, would more people be able to attend if it were later, like maybe 4 to 6 or something, you know, to get off work?
You hit traffic both directions, though.
Oh, well, that's
The
traffic.
4, you at least don't have traffic one way.
Right. Well, no?
I
Okay.
know I have a lot of traffic to get here. I understand.
Yeah, because you're right here in Millbrae. I'm sorry, you know, my heart breaks.
But I think of all those meetings in Redwood City, that if
Yeah.
you're going to the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
it can be
It's hard.
bad coming from the north.
I don't know. I do want to try to encourage, if you can take some time off to come. It's very informative, so.
And just to say, Madam Chair, that for me, it would be more convenient. 1 to 4 is right in the middle of my workday, and there's just sometimes just staffing is impossible for me to get away. So the later in the day, the easier would be for me.
What if it were like at noon and we brought in sandwiches or something?
If that's what it takes.
Like, you know, 11:30 to 2 or something.
Technically, I have the room blocked out from like 12 to 4:30, just as a, but I mean, we can look at other times too.
Food's
I would only think the only problem when you go into that 4:30 during the school year is this room, I think, Monday through Friday is booked as an after-school activity, especially as we're short on space after the community
Right.
center fire. But obviously, I can come at any time that it would work. But
Great, thank you. Okay. Any other questions about technical working group in public? No. Okay. So item number 9, I do have a speaker card for item number 9, but I want to I want to have James give a report on the work program subcommittee.
So I'll keep it brief. Just when we met with the group in back in June. We wanted to take a look at both the strategic plan and the work plan. And just real quick, the strategic plan is what the Roundtable's goals are for 3 years out, and then the working plan is every year, and that's the one that we revisit. We spent most of that meeting talking about the strategic plan, and there was a lot of edits and comments that were provided. So we ended that meeting giving some homework to each of the members that were present to look at the document, provide further edits, and we're going to try to convene a meeting in August and see if we could finish that up and start on the work program. The goal really is to have when we're done working with the strategic plan and starting to look at the work plan to kind of figure out what our priorities over the year will be, we want to have that merge with the discussions of the technical working group meeting. As Jean was saying, we're going to start looking at what we've been talking about in regards to the initiative and look at those priorities, and that's how that gets put into the work plan on what we're going to be focusing on and what our priorities are. So that's really all I had on that. There will be a meeting coordinated hopefully sometime in late August, so I will reach out to members and start pulling some dates for that.
Okay. Any comments from members? Yes, Anne.
So a year ago at this meeting and at the work plan subcommittee meetings, we talked about doing things other than those based around the FAA report. One of those, of course, being issues of ground-based noise and other issues. And I was not at that last meeting. I'm happy to do homework for the city of Millbrae. But at some point, there needs to be issues other than the FAA report. Because it's not helping my people. It's not helping the people of Millbrae. I don't know if it's helping the people of Burlingame. That's why they in Hillsborough have gone off and done their own thing now. They need to start listening to the issues that affect us. We need to start listening to the issues that affect us. And if I'm showing my frustration, I am frustrated. I'm very frustrated because both at the last meeting 2 weeks ago and in previous meetings, we've talked about including ground-based noise as issues that we'll begin to look at. And yet months go by and nothing happens.
Any questions?
And ground-based noise actually affects more of us. It actually, for example, affects Pacifica as well.
I agree.
As strange as that may seem.
Madam Chair, I was going to say this for a little later to propose an agenda item, but in Burlingame, they have formed a group to talk about ground-based noise, about the backblast, and a lot of my constituents feel that there's been infrastructure or some sort of change that has increased the noise. We keep being told that it's not, that it's simply volume and atmospherics. You know, I think at this point we need to take a step further, and I'm hoping that we can get a study done to address those questions. And the questions are, were there any infrastructure changes that happened at the airport or any type of operational changes at the airport that caused an increase in the backblast noise? And beyond that, is there anything we can do to change what the new infrastructure is or any other new technology that exists that could help mitigate the noise? And so what I'd like to do is just maybe place it on the next agenda, talk about getting a third-party report that could address these questions once and for all. I'm personally, I can't look at them in the eye again and tell them it's just volume and atmospherics. It's just, I'm done. So I would love to have something else, and so I appreciate Councilmember Schneider bringing it up.
I think this, I actually have been chomping at the bit to form the ad hoc committee about backblast noise effects from the roundtable, but you know, this procedure, which is very frustrating to me, of having to get the work plan done and the strategic plan and then this and that, is very frustrating. And so I think that that's a very good suggestion, and I will take that to heart and make sure that happens. We have an airport representative here. I don't know if Ivar, you would have any comment to make about this? I mean, where would we start?
First of all, you can call me Doug. I would say.
Call you.
Ivar, it's all right.
Oh, I did.
My only comment would be that, I think it's, I think it's the role of the roundtable to kind of set its course, to set the agenda for the issues it's going to focus on. Obviously, the issues vary depending on the community, and clearly for the communities like Millbrae and Burlingame, this is a topic that's come up. So we view ourselves as a resource to you. Bert's team brings a great level of technical know-how and ability. So we are a resource to you, and as you chart your course and determine really what the priorities are that you want to focus on, we're here for that.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just clarify real fast. So,
James.
and I apologize that it does sound like it's a tedious process to do the strategic plan and work plan, but it does exist for a reason that this group is charged staff to do. So I've done my best to try to make it as streamlined as possible, but you have to understand also, for the point that Ann was making, the work plan and strategic plan gives us guidance on what the priorities are. Otherwise, they get lost. And from my standpoint, I've been with this group since 2012, and shortly after that is when we started working with the initiative. And yeah, we've done the work plan program year after year, but our focus has been the initiative. So seeing that that's coming to a close, I mean, I'm actually getting quite excited in that we can actually go back to work plan. Because those of you who've been on the roundtable long enough, you saw on the agenda that there was actually a section that was called work plan. And it had those items in there listed that they had, I don't think it had ground-based, but it could have ground-based, and we would report on it and what we did on that, and the other areas that are in there as consistent items. Because that has been one of the comments that we received from public and members, that wasn't this discussed at the last meeting, and there's no follow-up mechanism for that.
Right.
So that's really my goal, and so I'm hoping I'm trying to get through the process as quickly as possible, while at the same time also trying to do the initiative wrap-up, while we're also trying to do GBES. So in light of everything that's been happening, I think right now everything is starting to gel together, so I appreciate the patience.
I didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
No, and I understand
I
that the
think you're
group-
doing an excellent job. And
I mean, I
it
understand the
really is.
frustrations, and it's like, trust me, we want to go to work, and we want to like already have those ideas planted in there. And this also benefits us working with the FAA. If they're going to hold us to a 30-day time limit, or whatever the case may be, to get them the items that we're working on, then we already have that. So right now, it's like everything's happening in this crucial time that I think really that's going to kind of lend to helping us.
Any other comments from roundtable members on this? Okay. So our 10th item is a follow-up from the Ledge Committee. Item number 9. So sorry. I thought that was Robert. Yes, Mountain View. Sorry. Thank you for keeping me on task here.
Since the last roundtable, I attended both the legislative working group meeting and the legislative subcommittee meeting and the work program committee meeting. And in the latter, I was pleased to see that there was a sense from many of the people participating that the legislative action should have a higher priority than maybe they've been given in the past. And that means addressing influencers as well as working with the FAA and the airport. And that's very clear at the moment because there's an FAA reauthorization bill that's working its way through the Senate. It's already passed the House that has a lot of amendments in it. And I want to thank Ms. Borgens for writing, for sponsoring the process of getting a letter to our senators regarding that. One of the things that was clear in the legislative group was that we were hampered by a lack of prospective proposals that were on the table that we could refer to. Oh. And because we didn't have a set of proposals that the roundtable could refer to, we ended up asking NOIS, the advocacy group in DC, for some suggestions, and they provided some, but there is a sense among many, and not just in this area, that NOIS's prescriptions are kind of weak. They may have agendas that are not as strong as the agenda that we would adopt. And so my suggestion is that as part of the work group, we should be looking to charge, as part of the work program, we should charge the technical working group with developing a bank of proactive proposals that we can vet on our own time to address specific issues that we would like to see implemented. And if it involves amendments or bills that need to be passed in the House or the Senate, let's be ready to advance them when the time is ripe. And the time has been ripe for the last 3 months. We were a little late to the party, perhaps because we were expecting Noise to lead on this, and they didn't. But the bottom line is, let's develop a bank of proactive procedures and be ready to pursue them with influencers when the time is right. Thank you.
Perfect. There you go. Okay. So moving on to number 10, I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the legislative subcommittee to give a report on the meeting that was held on July 17th. Janet Borgens, Starwood City.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone that attended that meeting. Thank you, James, for helping us do this, and Elizabeth for helping us craft this language. We did provide a letter. It's little pieces, you know, that we're doing, chipping away a little bit. And I do appreciate the tone of this letter. It was fairly strong and yet supportive at the same time without getting anybody really mad at us, because you certainly don't want that, or they'll just throw it in a pile. So I appreciate the fact that you guys kind of push back on me, because I come on a little strong sometime. I want it now. I want it yesterday, and I want the language strong. But that doesn't always get anything accomplished, so I appreciate this. So moving forward, we will continue to work with them. I do agree to some point. I think Noise did a good job in educating us and talking with us, but I do agree that to some degree we need to take the initiative on a lot of these things ourselves. So I did learn a lot from listening to them, but I also learned that we need to take control of this, and I think they did what they needed to do. But I would like to hear more, and just the frustration we're hearing from our group today, that's what we need to take to the table. That frustration in a respective kind of, we want answers now, but we understand at the same time. So I don't know how to.
So Janet, from the legislative committee's point of view, do you think that we could be writing more letters like what we wrote and just kind of start churning them out, you know, if we kind of get our positions and we just start writing letters. I mean, that's really all we can do to the Congress and the senators.
But I think to that, yes. I think eventually everything changes, and they change in little steps. So, you know, leaders change, representatives change, and I think the more we continue to write letters, and not always the same thing, we have to change the words, otherwise it becomes another letter from us. It just becomes another letter from the Roundtable. So I think we need to shake it up a little, maybe sometimes a little more words, sometimes a little less words, very pointed in what we're asking, what we're requesting, and at the same time, you know, I always say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them, you know, so you get your message out there. But yes, I do think we need to continue to write these letters, continue.
Any other Roundtable member have any comments on this? Sue?
No, I think we actually talked about that a little bit in the legislative committee, is that messaging is extremely important. And letters are legal documents that become part of a record. And yeah, simplicity, straight to the point, and I think Noise learned from us our very strong commitment to being very proactive in this area. So I think they walked away with that and picked up that we were pretty more pointed. So our letter actually covers a few more things like the CNLs and things that, so our letter did use strong language as well as being very polite. So
yes.
I totally agree, we should be doing that.
Yeah.
Any other members of the Roundtable have a comment on this? Seeing none, all, yes. Oh, Al.
I know Menlo Park a couple years ago had a city resolution that went to the congressman. Has any other city done the same, and what's been the response to that?
So I wish the representative from Menlo Park was here tonight. Sorry that he's not.
You mean to the, if I may?
Yes?
Resolution to the congresspersons? Yes. Yeah, Pacifica has done those kind of things too, and we do get a good response. I think the legislators especially in our area, they're working for these causes. They're at a disadvantage because the number of proactive persons on our behalf are very limited, so they do appreciate that because they're in a very difficult situation, and we do get feedback from them from that rather immediately, actually.
But in terms of other than, how do I phrase this, other than satisfying a PC motive, have we seen any concrete responses from those resolutions? I mean, they're nice to do, and I'd like to do them, but I'm trying to see if they're effective or not.
Well, I think they're as effective as they can be because we're working in concert. For example, the letter that we just composed and sent off this time from the roundtable as a whole
senators.
was, as we said, very focused, very specific, comprehensive, strong language was used as well as being polite. So my understanding from feedback is they really do like that. That's very helpful.
Okay. We'll move on.
So then,
Yes.
Elizabeth, moving
Janet.
forward, then we have the support of the whole roundtable to continue this direction with letters and, okay.
Good.
I mean,
Okay.
I see ahead.
On to other matters. I'm going to turn it over to Jean for aviation noise, news, and updates. I think we have a
Yeah, I think there's a
video
presentation.
or presentation. Got to wake up the machine a little bit.
What?
It likes to go to sleep.
When I read this, and granted I wasn't there because I was waiting for Andy.
I think it was labeled noise news or.
Except this one. But it's a good letter.
Sure. I saw it earlier. Okay. Sure. I could have got it. Thanks, Bert. All right. So we have a few things that, just to bring you up to speed on some things. Some has to do with research, others with, as was mentioned earlier, some legislative things. NASA has completed research showing that they can reduce airframe noise by as much as 70% on arrival. As you know, there's been a lot of noise reduction to airplanes over the years. Most of the noise reduction has come from engine noise reduction, which is good for departures. But now arrivals at many airports are becoming just as dominant as departure noise. And so now we're at a point where manufacturers are looking for ways to reduce more airframe noise than in the past. So the Acoustic Research Management of NASA successfully combined several technologies. Unfortunately, I went to look for graphics of these and they don't exist, so I will try to explain what they are verbally. Landing gear cavity treated with a series of chevrons, so they're just mixing the air when it gets into that cavity that holds the landing gear when it comes down. There's a lot of air turbulence that gets into that cavity and produces noise. So they were looking for ways to break up that airflow so that the noise isn't produced out of the cavity that houses the landing gear when it comes down. Also looked at adaptive compliant trailing edge wing flap on the wing to make it, again, a little bit quieter when they put the flaps down, and what we call when they're arriving, you know, the wing gets larger, we call it making it dirty, so to speak, produces a lot of noise. So they're looking at ways, again, to change that airflow and change the the interaction with the wing and the airframe to make it quieter, as well as the other thing was porous landing gear fairings. So they're looking at when the landing gear comes down to produce a fairing around it so that, again, it looks less dirty to the air that's coming into it and producing less noise. Let's see, unmanned aircraft traffic management system is under development. Boeing is actually partnered with Spark Cognition to use artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies to track unmanned aerial vehicles in flight and allocate traffic corridors and routes to ensure safe, secure transportation. I will say that I was at a conference, I think it was about a month ago, in Southern California, and Uber Elevate was actually there. Uber Elevate is trying to, well, more than trying, they really plan in the next few years to actually transport people with electric planes across cities. Where Uber is inner city, they're looking at if you need to go cross city, which in LA can take hours, to get them there in minutes. So they're really working there, and they are working with the FAA diligently to try to find ways to make that work for them. So, you know, while this looked like pie in the sky just even a year ago, I would say there's been so much movement on it that things like this are happening, which is why you're seeing Boeing and Spark Cognition joining forces, trying to find ways to make the airspace work to be able to make this happen. Howard County, Maryland petitions the FAA to provide relief to residents impacted by the new Focus Next Gen flight paths around Baltimore Washington International Airport. County is asking FAA to restore the flight paths to pre-Next Gen status and elevate and evaluate any new routes before they are re-implemented. State of Maryland also filed similar administrative petition 3 weeks prior and filed suit with the FAA and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit. I want to point out that as a result of these actions, the FAA did withdraw from participating in their roundtable. Makes a lot of sense. They're suing the FAA, they can't come talk about it. Also in Maryland, the senators there are recommending language in the FAA reauthorization bill. This was talked about just recently here tonight. So the senators from Maryland are working with staff of the Senate Commerce Committee to address next-gen noise impacts on communities. They have recommended, and these are not confirmed, but some of the potential amendments to the Senate FAA reauthorization bill. Again, you did hear earlier that the House has passed their version. It's now in the Senate to come up with their version. And there are things in there such as noise dispersion, 21st century noise monitoring, they're calling it, so ways of better monitoring aircraft noise, and cumulative impacts, some of the things that are actually in the reauthorization bill. And I would say that it's been a while since we've had this much attention in the reauthorization bill on noise, probably since the phase out of stage 2 aircraft, actually, so it's been a while. ACRP has their list of projects out for fiscal year 2019. They put it out that there are 21 projects. One project directly addresses aircraft noise, and more importantly, directly addresses next-gen flight procedures. The project is 0288, Techniques for Modifying Next-Gen Flight Track Design to Reduce Noise Exposure and Annoyance. It's currently funded at $400,000, and the objective of the research is to identify viable techniques for considering both capacity, efficiency, FAA safety, those sorts of things, and community impacts when modifying next-gen flight tracks. Army is actually conducting research of noise monitoring, trying to use machine learning models to help predict noise levels at sites, but also between and beyond noise monitoring locations. So you can use the actual noise monitoring data to predict noise in between and further beyond. They're currently assessing the accuracy of some of those models and exploring practical implications of implementing approaches in real-time systems. So in the end, if this research proves valuable, noise monitoring systems around airports may very well change. There is some more research on non-auditory health effects of chronic noise exposure. You remember a few meetings ago, Mary Ellen Egan from HMH came and talked about some of the things that are going on in that aspect. Well, there's a research going on with Sound Sense LLC and Tufts University in Boston conducting research on this, and they're reviewing most recent literature, but then also looking at the correlation between ill health and aviation noise. So those types of research continue. That's all I have for noise news.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of information. It seems like there's a lot going on, and you know, I think the research field. So I have a question from Anne.
When you're looking at the studies that are being done out there, terminology can make a difference. So I see some of those ones that could directly help those of the communities that live close to the airport. But are we actually looking at is there any research or studies being done right now for those airports and the communities near them that said we're giving away our rights to a curfew, or any actions in trying to bring a curfew back? Or if not, throughout the night, at least between 1 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning. Is there anything done at all for any kind of respite on arrivals and departures, except for, of course, emergencies?
Well, there's actually a study, London Heathrow actually did a study a couple years ago now on respite, trying to change their nighttime runway use just for respite, so that, you know, this community this week would have these departures, this community this next week would have the departures. So they do have some results of that. I have not seen the results of that study, but I know that they did that. Other than that, there is legislation in the US that prohibits limiting access to airports. It's called the Part 161 process, which requires that you meet a number of objectives in order to impose a use restriction at an airport, such as a curfew, which is a use restriction. If you can't use the airport between certain times a day, that's a use restriction. And that was part of the Airport Noise and Capacity Act that was passed in 1990. So in the US, it's harder to come up with ways to, you know, implement curfews. In fact, this is my opinion only, but I believe Part 161 was written to never be successful, meaning that airports couldn't any longer restrict use of their airports. So,
unless ANCA is overturned somehow.
That's why I said it's all in legislation.
Can I follow up on that? Well, because this has to do with the terminology that we use that brings us forward. In my field, when we started in the 80s, we only used the word recycling. And that left off the other things that are actually higher in the hierarchy, more pollution reducing. And it took a long time to get back to expand the terminology so that we actually looked at composting or reuse. If we don't begin to use the terminology, we will never get the studies, we will never get the legislative action if we don't begin to ask for things beyond just what's in the flight on there. So that's my point. I'm looking forward to the new work plan item being there, where we can identify the terminologies that we need to use so that we get the studies that give us the data to make the changes that we're going to have to do, so that people can actually get some sleep at night. And I'm one of those that is up all night long from backblast noise.
Any other member of the roundtable?
I don't know if this is the place or whether I wait for my comment as a member, but does SFO or our staff here, are we at all cognizant or aware of drones? Now, I know you did mention, and I saw it on TV too, it isn't just the Ubers, but there's a company and they had it on TV, and the first thing that hit me was people can afford to have this within a year. They can make flying cars. The Jetsons are here. But the thing that was startling is it wasn't a quiet Jetson. The backlash, when they turned the engine on, their hair went that way, and you could hear it on the TV. So I'm concerned that we or somebody we go after should be watching these things, because if that's available for somebody to buy in 2019. And drones today, a 16-year-old kid is giving trainings to his high school buddies and camps how to make drones. I'm concerned that we're going to have real big noise issues in our community. So I don't know where that's going to go, but I think we should be aware of it.
Thank you, Sue. I have 2 speaker cards from the public. The first one is Robert.
I just
Terry.
have one follow-up first for Jean on the noise update. When Maryland's lawsuit, is that because they got enough from their legislators to file the lawsuit because their airport takes up most of their, and their noise concerns covers most of their state? Or why do you think that they were successful in implementing that in with their senators and their legislative bodies?
I can't really speak to that because I don't have that knowledge. What I can say is that, they just filed the lawsuit. So to say they were successful remains to be seen, but they opted to file the lawsuit. Whereas we reviewed, you reviewed the information, and it was your recommendation that it probably wouldn't work here based on the information available. They went ahead and did it there. Not only the governor, but also the state of Maryland filed the suits.
I think the state of Maryland and the governor are a little different than the Community Roundtable. Number one, we don't have any funds to file lawsuits, and so we're just, if individual cities like Portola Valley did file a lawsuit and it failed, citizens, Portola Valley citizens, excuse me, yeah. So that kind of set the precedent that what Supervisor Pine always says, that, we can't kind of file another lawsuit like that. So, but this body cannot.
Okay,
yeah.
I was just trying to get an opinion on, and not that they were successful in their lawsuit, but they were successful in getting their state to agree to file the lawsuit on their behalf.
So I guess if the governor...
It's a small enough state that the noise concerns really were for most of the state from
maybe
their airport noise and the next gen changes.
Yeah, I think that if the governor of the state, he kind of has the power to say, well, we're gonna file a lawsuit, right? Okay. Any other roundtable members?
I just have a question. Do we know, did the Maryland one, did Next Gen roll out already as it has here, or is it just now rolling out?
No, it's already rolled out as well.
I'm gonna, we have 2 speaker cards, and that's all. I'm closing speaker cards because it's late. Robert, you've had the floor a lot tonight. You get 2 more minutes.
This last section, we've heard about drones and flying cars. I attended a presentation of an airplane noise conference a few months ago where a woman from NASA, which NASA is to some extent the research arm of the FAA, or the research arm for use of airspace, claimed that in 10 years she expected to see 1,000 times more things in the air than we have now. I'm unclear about whether the roundtable views drones and flying cars as part of your jurisdiction. If you are, I have a proposal which I would like to share with you, and which I'm working with Jerry Hill's office, Senator Jerry Hill's office, on regarding the jurisdiction of those things. That's my first point. The second point is I think you should be aware, as part of the update, that the bill before the Senate contains some really awful language with respect to the reintroduction of sonic booms. It basically says that either the FAA administrator does it in 3 years, and if we don't have a final ruling in 3 years, then all rules against sonic booms are gone. And the guidance to the FAA administrator is to set the sound level considering the loudest sounds that are acceptable for non-aviation purposes, which I would say is probably rock concerts. And it is also to be set considering what is economically feasible and technologically practical. So that's not sound-based, that's technology-based. So that language is really, really bad, and there's also language in the House bill to enable sonic booms. So the House bill is better than the Senate bill, but either way, you're looking at sonic booms one way or the other, unless this is opposed, and that seems like an issue. I would add one last thing. With respect to this business of curfews, I think it is a very fair question to ask whether or not ANCA, which is the law that prevents the extension of curfews, should be applied to a new technology like sonic booms, which is creating a new market that hasn't existed. And I would like to see that brought into question, but that would involve a lot of legislative legwork, but it's a question that I think we should address.
Thanks, Robert. Liz Lopez, you're up next and last. Oh, that was Siri telling me not to sweat it. There you go, Liz.
So I guess I don't understand everything that's being talked about, but I wanted to make sure that in the new technology that's being implemented, are they discussing vibration as sound? Is anybody doing any research into that, or is it just like regular decibels, trying to lower that, like from 65 decibels to like 50 decibels? And the reason I'm asking is because, sorry, but the reason I'm asking is because at night, even though sometimes the sound is a lot lower, it's just maybe like a lower frequency, and so it's like vibrating the house all night long. So even though the sound level may appear less to your ear, it's not necessarily less. I don't know if that makes any sense. Does that make sense, Jean? Okay. Yeah.
Want me to?
Can you
just briefly? The most of the research going on is with aircraft is around noise at this point. Vibration is tended to be an outcome of the noise levels, and so no, they're not. Any research I'm aware of right now, and I could be wrong, but the research I'm aware of is looking at noise levels in terms of decibels.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So. Moving on, our last agenda item is member communications and announcements. Any Roundtable member have any announcements, any fun things that are happening in your life that you'd like to tell us about? Invite us to your parties, block parties. Well,
I don't have a block party, sorry. But are we on number 12?
We're on number 12, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So I am concerned that the roundtable, you know, every 2 years we could have, and then maybe there's alternating cities, so we could have new people at the table, and some of them may be clueless, actually, of the strain that we've all been under. So I'm suggesting that a little synopsis and an update to the new appointees before they get here about our issues and our public concerns, so that they feel committed to really be here. I think tonight we have a full house, but sometimes we have a little quorum issue. That doesn't look good, not to have a strong SFO roundtable quorum, and some cities are not as impacted as others, but we're all in this together, and united we are stronger. So I would just suggest that there be a short but quick way so that new members really get the oomph of the tension that's going on. Does that make any sense?
So we do host a Noise 101
right,
seminar.
But that's like how noise happens and all that stuff.
That sounds, I agree with what you're saying. Procedurally, we cannot hold orientation meetings for every new member that comes on board. It is incumbent upon whoever gets appointed to this board to, number one, have the desire and the passion to submerge themselves and learn about it also.
Right, I understand that, but I think maybe the legislative committee could take it upon ourselves to have a little blurb that we can pass out to each new member, so they can read it and be on.
The website is,
yeah.
The website is pretty informative, but if that's
I'm kind of like being really pointed, jab you in the ribs. You know?
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair?
I have a comment. Excuse me. So, So, member communications, Atherton's having a summer concert on Thursday. Come on down to Hobart Palmer Park, and it's the Wobblies. The Wobblies? Somebody Clark and the Wobbles? Yeah, it'll be fun. We had it in the park. Bring a blanket, a bottle of wine, and have fun. Terry?
Brisbane's having 2 events. Friday night is concert in the park, and it's Diego's Umbrella,
Oh.
starting at 6 o'clock, and they are smoking hot band.
Smoking.
And then Saturday we are having a kite festival at our marina,
Oh.
and the yacht club there is hosting hot dogs, and there's going to be quiet things in the sky with the kites.
You hope. Wonderful. That's a lot of fun. We'll have fun with that. Any other members have something fun to announce? I only want to hear about something fun right now. Member communications.
Right here.
Yes.
San Bruno's having music in the park on Friday, so you can come on down. It's a little closer, but
Super. What time?
6 o'clock.
In the evening?
Yes.
Oh, bring something warm to wear. What do you think, huh? Okay.
us too.
Anybody else? Janet?
We have, every Friday night, we have concerts downtown, Redwood City.
Yeah.
We have them Wednesdays at our Stafford Park, and then Friday nights, we have, all through the summer, we have concerts downtown. Starts at 6, goes to 8. The drinking stops in the square at 8. Yeah, right, okay.
Well, you
But,
enforce
yeah,
it.
so
yeah.
and also for all communities, this coming Tuesday is National Night Out.
Yes.
So all communities are celebrating
We're
National
doing it
Night
too,
Out.
everybody.
So, yes.
So Ann, do you have something fun to talk about?
Go ahead, Ann, be fun.
This coming Saturday, from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we're having the grand opening of our 3rd museum here in small town Millbrae. It's right out here. It's our carriage house. You'll see our historic. I can't tell you what year the fire engine is, but we'll have a number of fire engines, and a couple of other historical groups are going to be doing history on that. And then on Saturday the 18th, the Millbrae Lions Club is having their car show. It takes up 4 blocks of Millbrae Avenue. We get about 4,000 or 5,000 people. Food, the Leos have a lemonade stand. The Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have games. We're trying to add more family fun on that. So 2 fun
Great.
things.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Ricardo?
No, I don't.
Burlingame's not doing
We have a
anything
lot
fun?
of fun things going on in Burlingame. I'm just not prepared to talk about it.
It's been a long night. All right. With that, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, yourself?
Good.
Hey, I have a question in regards to that second.
Sure.
It's on Saturday the 18th.